And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Monday, August 1st. I didn't realize it was August 1st. God, it's been a long weekend.
I thought
anyway,
I am first, so
that's fair. Well, it depends on if you're trying to go to the airport or not and fly out of Dallas. I'm Josh Engelman. I am joined by Adam Scher. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. We have definitely an MLB slate ahead of us. I was in the wrong call. 9 games tonight. Feels like a really nice balance. That is sort of exactly what I wanted. Before we get started, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Normally in these situations, I'm like, hey, man, how'd your weekend go? What'd you do? I know the answer to all those questions at this point in time. We'll talk about it anyway. Fun times taking down an MMA final.
Yeah, it was a good time. Unfortunately, tied for first, so still have to play a head-to-head for the Tournament of Champions seat. But yeah, really good time. Had fun at the fights. It was cool just hanging out, and then obviously winning was really fun also.
You enjoyed winning? That was the thing?
Yeah. You kind of sound like you're underwater, by the way.
Really? Let me see here.
Winning was definitely fun. It was nice too. I mean, like, didn't even have to really sweat the final fights, could just like soak it in and enjoy it.
How about now? Am I good now?
Yep.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Josh does sound. Yeah, Josh was on his AirPods apparently because he didn't have his microphone plugged in. Real smart. It's a rookie operation, but I haven't been in this chair for a show since last Friday. So
yeah, I wasn't sure if I was even going to say anything because I was like, it could completely just be like on my end for the same reasons. But then I saw somebody in chat say it, so I was all right. It's not just me.
So you sounded worse to me, but I just didn't care. I didn't even.
Do I sound better now?
No, you were fine.
Okay.
It was all me. It was totally me. So that's where we're at right now. 9-gamer. Baseball was poor for you and I yesterday. Hopefully it goes a little bit better today. I'm just ready to dive in. I don't really have much else to say. My brain isn't working the way that I would like it to. So if you're ready, I'm ready.
Yeah. My brain hasn't been working the way I would like it to for the last 24 hours. So I think we're good to go.
I think it's been pretty good.
I was saying post fight.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Not being able to correctly book a flight.
Do we talk about it?
I mean, I don't care. It was ridiculous.
We're getting ready to go to the airport yesterday. And at that moment, we are about to order an Uber. That's how close we are to go to the airport. Adam's flight gets canceled. He rebooks for a flight slightly later than what it was going to be. So it buys us some time. We end up going just to like a regular, bar, restaurant, hang out for a couple hours, and then we head to the airport. Get to the airport. I make my way through security. Adam is trying to go through security, having some trouble finding a boarding pass. They just take a picture of his face and send him on his merry way. And then we get into the airport trying to get to, we're in a sky train type joint, trying to go to a different terminal. And at that moment, we realized that Adam had rebooked his flight for today at 6 p.m. So eventually we were able to hunt that one down and get it straightened out, and you were able to get home. But that was a very entertaining half hour.
Yeah, it explained why I'm just sitting there just like, American's website is so bad. Like, how can I not find my boarding pass anywhere? This seems like something I should easily be able to find. And then I'm showing Josh my phone, where would it be? And at the same time, we both realized it says August 1st, not July 31st.
Blitz says, shocked you even made it back home on time.
Me too.
We were exceptionally responsible yesterday.
We were responsible yesterday. What would have hurt it was Dallas closes early. We tried to go out and get into stuff Saturday night after I won, but nothing was open. So we kind of just had to go back and go to sleep. If we had been in New York or Vegas or San Diego or something, I would not have made it home on time.
No, you would still be there for sure. Dallas was just weird. We couldn't find food at 1:30 in the morning anywhere. It was a chore. We walked to multiple places that either were not serving food or simply weren't open, even though Google said they were. We took Ubers to places to get food that were not serving food. It was the most bizarre scenario ever. But
yeah, and then we finally found the most terrifying old little lady to serve us food.
She was so mean. She must like she just at that point in time in the night, she's just got to be over.
Oh yeah,
everything
she was completely over
coming
it.
in.
She was not happy.
And the crazy thing is, like, we weren't like a problem at all. Like,
Right.
we were just super normal. Like, we weren't like carrying on or like diving on top of each other, or, like screaming or anything.
Yeah,
like that.
no,
Like,
the straw that broke the camel's back for her was somebody asking if they could use the restroom.
yeah.
Or where the restroom was or something.
Or can I get a water? Yeah, it's 75
Yeah, that was
cents.
another one. No, can I get a cup?
Yeah. 75 cents for a water cup, and the water cup held, I think, 2 ounces of water. It was essentially just like a glorified plastic shot glass.
Yeah. Eric Johnson said, how do they not have food at the UFC? Obviously, they had food at the UFC event. We were looking for food again after.
Yeah, post. I mean, I didn't even think about eating anything once the main card started. So we're talking like 3 hours at that point. So
right.
Yeah, we tried to hunt it down, but it was not as easy. Let's hunt down some winners here. You ready to talk the 9-gamer?
Yep.
Yankees and Mariners, 5.1 run implied total for the Yankees, 3.9 for the Mariners. Domingo Germán and Marco Gonzalez going in this one. Germán, 6,400 on DraftKings. He's 5,700 on FanDuel. Pulling 20% ownership right now, looking like the preferred paydown option. Meanwhile, Marco Gonzalez pulling precisely 0 ownership, so not all that interested there. Let's start with Germán. How do you feel about him here against Seattle?
I think the price tag's a little bit too cheap. Like, he's clearly a flawed pitcher and human being, but it's still it's a cheap price tag for somebody that at least has, some semblance of talent. 23% strikeout percentage this year, 5.05 xFIP, obviously not great. We don't have like a huge sample size on him going back a while because of injuries and criminal activity. But since the start of 2020, 22.5% strikeout percentage against right-handed hitters, 214 expected ISO, 25.5% strikeout percentage against lefties, 155 expected ISO. Just, I think, a pretty inexpensive price tag. Not the best matchup against Seattle, but you do also have Julio Rodriguez on the injured list, so that lineup automatically becomes a lot weaker. I think, given the price, he looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think I have no problem with him getting the ownership that he's getting. I think he is pretty clearly the best guy that you can get to at the bottom. Don't know if I need him in a fifth of my lineups, but I get it. The value is unquestionably there. There's no justification at all for Marco Gonzalez, correct?
No, I don't think so. Not in this spot. Like, he's one of those guys where if he's at home in spacious, whatever they're calling Safeco Field now, against a mediocre offense, he can certainly put a good game together, but this isn't the spot where I'd be chasing that.
I think we are going to be chasing the New York Yankees bats. They tied for the top implied run total here. They are third in our top stack tool, third in aggregate ownership. I actually have them first in my top stack, but we're only separated by a percentage point, so nothing too crazy. I did run a dummy crunch before the slate started. I am getting to quite a bit of New York. Not surprised there, especially with the fact that you gain all of that additional value of the Germán value at 6,400. So what do you want to do with the Yankees today?
I want to play them. I mean, Gonzalez is getting out of Seattle so far this year. Only a 150 expected ISO allowed to righties, but also an 11.9% strikeout percentage. I will gladly take my chances with the right-handed power bats for the Yankees. Even though Yankee Stadium does play up left-handed power more than right-handed power, it's still clearly not as favorable as pitching in Seattle for Gonzalez. So it looks like a really good spot for the Yankees.
103 righty park factor from StatCast over the past 3 years for New York. So it's not a 109 for the lefties, but still above average, and that's really all you need. Looking like Judge is probably a relatively likely cash option, 22% owned, and he's Aaron Judge.
Yeah, I would think he's very likely. I mean, 6,400 is obviously expensive, but it's Aaron Judge. It's a good spot. The Rockies aren't at home, so you have more availability in your lineup. Blitz said, also heard they had some of the best strip clubs in the country after Vegas figured Adam would be all over that. That was the plan, because it did say that they were open until 4 as opposed to the bars closing early. But by the time it took us an hour and a half to find food somewhere, we just kind of gave up.
Yeah, I think we all we lost all of the energy that would have driven us forward to that.
Yeah, well, and then we also just didn't trust Google, things to be open. So it was just oh, this place is here, but I don't even know if it exists.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. So on this crunch that I ran, Yankees were my most exposed overall team. So I'm going to be getting here in wealth. And I'm happy about it too, because they look really good. We justify anything here for the Mariners bats? They are 10th in our top stack, 12th in ownership. They are showing up as pretty significantly under-owned. They're a really good value stack. And you get the added benefit of having Herman on the opposite side pulling 20% ownership. This feels like a spot where it is a kind of a decent idea to try to attack that ownership. I wish Julio Rodriguez was in the lineup.
Right. Like, I still think you can make the case. I mean, Jesse Winker at 3,100 is a really cheap price tag. He has obviously struggled this year. Part of that can be attributed to going from Cincinnati to Seattle. Part of that can be attributed to bad luck. But this is a spot where, this park sets up great for Jesse Winker. So individually, I like him. JP Crawford's cheap. I mean, this whole team is really inexpensive. So I do think you can make the case for them as a stack. Herman, like we said, he's not a great pitcher. It's mostly just that he's cheap, and that's why he's going to get some ownership. He has strikeout upside, but he's not a great pitcher overall. So Jesse Winker individually, I think, looks very, very good. And then if you do stack some Seattle, I think that's fine as well.
All righty. Anything else we need to touch on in this game?
Nope.
All righty. Let's go to
Rob Martin. That's wrong.
What did I miss?
If you eat at a strip club, you're a special kind of gross.
Oh my God, no. That's good.
I mean, it depends where you are, but
yeah,
like upscale strip clubs I've been to have fantastic food, and other ones just have.
Yeah, if it's in Idaho, I might not want to be hitting up. Like, they might not have the greatest fares. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, if I'm hitting, the 8th best strip club within like a city, I might not eat there, but definitely can get some food.
Yeah, hit me up with wherever Lou Will wants to eat wings. Right. I trust it.
Right,
I trust it. Next game up, Nats and Mets. Pat Corbin going for the Nationals. Max Scherzer going for the Mets. No surprise, Mets are the biggest favorites on today's slate. Corbin is pulling absolutely no ownership. Max Scherzer, on the other hand, 30% owned, 10,600, most expensive pitcher on today's slate by $900. I don't get the sense we have much to say here. It's Max Scherzer. He looks really good. I think he's probably the best pitcher for today.
Yeah, if you want to point to negatives, 1, the Nats are difficult to strike out as a lineup in general. 2, they're likely to be left-handed heavy. So Scherzer is still very good against lefties, just not as good as he is against righties. All of that being said, he still looks great. The Nats overall are a below-average offense in terms of production. Again, below average in terms of strikeouts as well. But also, 10-6 for Scherzer. It's just the same thing that we've been talking about all season long. If this were the days where DraftKings priced the best pitcher on the slate at $12K, I'd be a little bit more interested in getting into the whole conversation about, is he going to get enough strikeouts against the Nats, blah, blah, blah. But at 10-6, it's just, maybe he gets a strikeout or two less than normal, but it doesn't really matter at that price.
Yeah, he looks great. 29% in our top pitchers tool. It's exactly where I had him. I have nothing else to say here. I want to play Max Scherzer on most slates that he's on the slate. He's good. Not a great strikeout matchup though, but I don't care. He transcends anything like that.
Yep.
Do you have any interest in Corbin?
No.
As like an Herman pivot, I guess.
Yeah, it's just a really difficult sell. I mean, obviously he's not very good. He hasn't been for a while. So far this season, 19.5% strikeout percentage. He does only have a 4.03 xFIP. So, maybe not as, clearly not as bad as his 6.5 ERA, 379 BABIP, only a 62% left on base percentage. He has been really unlucky in some aspects this year, but at the same time, also a 218 expected ISO to right-handed hitters, and you're likely to get a Mets lineup that is entirely right-handed with the exception of Nimmo and McNeil. So it's still just a really difficult spot to want to get to Corbin, I think.
What I do think some people are going to be getting to is the New York Mets. Number 1 in our top stack tool, 6th in ownership. They are expensive, very expensive at the top, in fact. But I do think they grade out as one of the better options that we're going to find today. The implied total looks great. There's plenty of talent in the lineup. Pretty easy to stack as well, other than the salaries. And you have 2 guys with MPEs, which should certainly help, potentially at least. How do you feel about the Mets?
I think they look good, and the pricing does help keep down the ownership. I mean, on DraftKings, the only player we have projected above 10% is Starling Marte at 14%. He's 5,700. Alonso is 6,300. Lindor is 5,600. So it's really difficult to full stack this team and then not be sacrificing somewhere else, whether it's pitching or one-offs or both. So I think that does keep the ownership in check a bit, but it's still clearly a very, very high upside matchup here.
Any cash game options in this Mets lineup?
I think it's more so like if Alonso fits or if Lindor fits or if Marte fits, any of those guys are obviously fine plays. Same goes for Mark Canha. But I have a more difficult time pointing to one of them. Whereas like with the Yankees, it's like, okay, clearly Aaron Judge is at the top of the list. I think it's a little bit more difficult to pinpoint one guy on the Mets.
Do you prefer, which of these two New York teams do you prefer today, the Mets or the Yankees?
Probably the Yankees.
Okay.
I think it's close.
Sure.
They're just a little bit. They're a little bit less expensive. Is the tiebreaker for me?
I'm leaning with you as well. I prefer the Yanks a little bit, but clearly the Mets look good. I can't be too mad about getting to New York. I can't imagine getting to the Washington Nationals unless I'm getting to Luis Garcia accidentally because I have Luis Garcia, the pitcher. So how do you feel about the Nats?
Soto at 5,300 is actually a decent discount, when you consider that Judge is 6,400, for example.
Would you be nervous to play him?
You mean because he might get traded mid-game?
Yeah.
I mean,
you're not going to do anything about it, but you would be nervous about it.
What'd you say?
We're not going to do anything about it, but I would be nervous about it.
Yeah, I would rather that not be a possibility. But I mean, the biggest reason I wouldn't play him would still be that he's facing Max Scherzer, not that he might get traded mid-game.
Yeah, I could see him getting one at bat.
And then
all of a sudden they're showing him hugging everybody.
Right. Yeah, exactly. you're like sweating your really good lineup that has a Juan Soto one-off, and you turn on the game and time to see him hugging dudes in the dugout.
Yeah, his jersey's already in like a 6-year-old's hands.
Right.
Stands. I got nothing else here. We can't talk about the Nats. Like, there's no way I'm targeting against Scherzer.
Yep, agreed.
Which means we can talk a little bit about the schedule for the rest of the day. Coming up 3:45 p.m. on our Best Ball channel, Best Ball Mania Monday. Check out some drafts. We'll get the MLB Deeper Dive. We'll be back at 5 p.m. That will be Adam. 6 p.m. I will be back on Live Before Locks. We'll have 2 more hours of baseball content later today. And then one of our new tools, the DK Night Owl, is free for today. We're getting basically every single thing that we have from a data perspective in one spot instead of having to bounce around through a couple different tables. So check that out. We're testing it out, still trying to make it look even better for you guys, but that will be free for today. Link, I assume, in the description of this video. Guardians and Diamondbacks. 4.9 run implied total for Cleveland, 4.1 for Arizona. Cal Quantrill and Zach Davies. Neither one of these guys getting any ownership. I don't really expect to have any shares of either guy.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Neither. I mean, it's not a good strikeout matchup for Davies. He's not a good strikeout pitcher anyway. Quantrill also a bad strikeout pitcher. More favorable matchup for him, but I still just don't really see any real reason to get there. 15% strikeout percentage for Quantrill, 18.7 for Davies, 4.38 xFIP for Davies, 4.65 for Quantrill. Just nothing that stands out.
Yep, same page. Offense, though, certainly stands out here. Cleveland is 5th in our top stack tool, 4th in ownership. The Diamondbacks are 7th on both sides, but the gap between Cleveland and Arizona in ownership is not all that huge. I actually had Cleveland a little bit higher, and this is the team that I am second most exposed to, just barely behind the Yankees. Let's start with Cleveland. How do you feel about the Guardians today?
I think it's a pretty solid spot for them. Nearly a 5 implied run total, reasonable pricing. The only player in the lineup above 5K is Jose Ramirez, and that's obviously fully deserved. Quan at 4,400. You got a huge price drop on Ahmed Rosario. He had been up to like 5,200 recently. Now he's down to 4,100, so that looks like a pretty good price. So far this year, Davies has actually struck out 26% of righties with a 145 expected ISO, but only 11% of lefties, 173 expected ISO. Clearly, you're going to look to the left-handed bats first. Jose Ramirez obviously stands out, but overall, I think it's just a pretty good lineup.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting to a ton. Ramirez obviously pulling a lot of ownership and is generally speaking one of the only third base cash options you're going to get to. Today is no different. Do you see any other potential cash options in this Cleveland lineup?
Potentially Reyes, if you need to save some money. He's 2,700. He has plenty of power, has swing and miss. And I did mention that Davies actually has been getting strikeouts against righties this year, but typically throughout his career, he hasn't been a very good strikeout pitcher. So that sets up pretty well for Reyes. I would guess he's the second most likely to be in a cash lineup.
Okay. Yeah, I am getting to Cleveland right now. We'll see where that ends up as we get closer to lock. What about on the Arizona side? Like I said, they are 7th in top stack, 7th in ownership. They just seem like filler to me, a team that I'm likely to just be around the field on.
Yeah, it just seems like a middle of the road offense. Individually, the price tag on Alek Thomas looks good at 3,200, assuming he's going to be hitting second. That's a really, really cheap price. Josh Rojas has some upside. Ketel Marte at 4,900 looks pretty good. But in terms of like a full stack, I think it's going to be kind of difficult to really prioritize them. More so just a middle of the road. They're in a good enough spot. They look okay, but nothing really stands out about them. So far this year, despite not having very good strikeout stuff, Quantrill has done a decent job limiting power. 160 expected ISO to righties, 165 to lefties. So while he's not a pitcher that you're really looking to avoid, he's also not a pitcher where there's like one thing I can point to and say like, this is a huge hole that, we can exploit from a DFS standpoint.
Don't think we're seeing any cash options here. Alek Thomas at 10% owned, 3,200 would probably be the only thing that I think could actually sneak in, but I don't really think this is where we're going to be going.
Yeah, I would assume that if I got to somebody here, it would be Thomas.
Okay. I don't have anything else for this game. Just a good game to like attack for offense. I expect to have a decent chunk of ownership going here, but no real priorities on the Arizona side.
Agreed.
Twins and Tigers. 3.6 run implied total for the Twins, 3.4 for the Tigers. Devin Smeltzer and Tariq Skubal. At least I have it as Smeltzer. Looks like Smeltzer's not in our ownership. Is it somebody else?
I have Smeltzer.
Okay. Just make sure that Smeltzer really isn't in our ownership because I have it showing up as 0. Smeltzer. Yeah, not there. Okay. Talk about that in a second. Are you seeing it? Did we get a new run?
I'm seeing Sanchez now.
Where are you seeing that?
DraftKings.
Can you tell me?
What?
Can you tell me?
Yeah. DraftKings has him listed as probable.
Yeah, I got Fangraphs has it as Aaron Sanchez.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to switch to Aaron Sanchez in this case. Let's see what kind of change that creates. While you figure out how deep Aaron Sanchez is potentially going in this game, I will paste this new data into my sheet and we'll get an idea of what's going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, seems like he should be able to go as deep as they want him to, or as deep as he's capable of.
Okay. 7,100 for Sanchez on DK. Tariq Skubal 8K and is 12% owned. Tough matchup against the Twins. His offense is pretty stacked at this point. Skubal's good. It's kind of in a weird spot for me. I certainly like him, but the matchup is tough. Do you think you're going to be getting to Skubal?
If the ownership's low, I don't mind it. Right now we have it at 12%, 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So kind of just neutral. 24.7% strikeout percentage, 3.37 xFIP this year. He's a solid pitcher overall, but like you said, the matchup against Minnesota is difficult. He does have a 26.4% strikeout percentage against right-handed hitters. You're going to get an entirely right-handed lineup, most likely, with the exception of Arraez. So there's certainly risk in going here, but I do think that there's strikeout upside, and he's moderately owned.
Sanchez?
He's 7,100. He's gone at least 5 innings in each of his last 5 minor league starts. So that's why I'd said that I don't really have concerns about his ability to pitch deep into the game from a like endurance standpoint. But 7 starts in the majors this year, 31 in the 3rd innings, 4.57 xFIP. In the minor leagues this year, 3 starts, 15 innings with Washington, and then 8 with Minnesota. 5.26 xFIP in the 8 with Minnesota. So his 8 most recent. Certainly not a pitcher that I have any level of confidence in his ability to get out major league hitters.
Yeah, you and me both. Don't expect to get here. I guess we're about to talk about Tigers bats. Number 2 in top stack. number 1 in ownership. This is just because of the pitcher, right? Like this isn't real. I had them 12th.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean,
they came in. I had them
they
at
have
4% top stack.
Yeah. So do you have their current line in front of you?
Like the betting line?
Yeah.
So there's barely a line out there. It's posted as 7 at some garbage books, and I don't think that's gonna you're not getting to the number 2 spot with a 7 implied total in a game.
Right. This is what I was getting at.
Yeah. But I think that's just the lack of an official starting pitcher at the time. We know that this usually happens. I will confidently just use my data and say that they are a good value stack, but not a top stack.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it's going to be a high top value percentage. You're not going to have the same sort of top stack percentage. You probably will get a little bit of a decrease in ownership as well. But yeah, still, a good value spot. Going back to the start of last season, 13% strikeout percentage against righties for Sanchez, 134 expected ISO, not exactly what you're looking for from an offensive standpoint. Lefties striking out 15.5% with a 138 expected ISO. So again, he's been good at limiting power, but you're getting really inexpensive bats for most of this lineup. We know Riley Green is good. We know Baez has some power. Robbie Grossman is super inexpensive. Eric Haas has power, especially for a catcher. So it's a pretty good value stack.
Yeah. Okay. We're on the same page there. We'll see what that actually ends up looking like later today. Twins side of this one, not really pulling anything interesting. They are 11th in our top stack, 9th in ownership. The lineup's good. I don't mind if I get to some Twins, but I'm also not trying to target against Skubal either. So it's kind of an in-between spot.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like them in tournaments just from the upside standpoint. Byron Buxton at 5,300. Again, you're just getting a discount off of Aaron Judge while still getting a super talented player. Correa at 4,500, Polanco at 4,300. Those are all just very reasonable price tags. And then you get the cheaper guys like Jose Miranda at 3,500, Garlick, assuming he's going to be in the lineup at 3K. So, oh my God, Tim Beckham's back in the majors?
Yeah.
Did not know that. So yeah, I mean, from an upside standpoint, I get there, or I get it, because Skubal has done a good job limiting power to righties so far this year with a 142 expected ISO. But if you go back to the start of last season, he's still at 218. So it's not like you can super confidently say that he's not at risk of just giving up home runs to this lineup.
Fair. Yeah, I would happily take a leadoff Buxton in just about anything at 5,300 against just about any pitcher too. So it's just a weird spot to want to get to a lot of Minnesota, I think.
Yeah. DFIC asked about Robbie Grossman and cash. He's not somebody that I am looking at and saying oh yeah, I'm building around Robbie Grossman or something. But I could certainly see if you need a $2,300 hitter and he's hitting top 3 that you just go there.
Yeah, that would be. I don't think that would be crazy. I don't think we'll need it in the end though. Nothing else here for me.
Agreed.
Weird game. All right, I got nothing else. That's 4 games down. Now we could talk a little bit about the presenting sponsor of this show. That would be Prize Picks. Let's start with the promo code. If you use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, when you sign up, you can get a $100 first match deposit bonus, which means you can get up to $100. If you put in 50, they don't give you 100. They'll give you 50. If you put in 100, you will get 100. And now it's not about optimizers or sharks or anything like that. We're picking player props or something in the genre of player props. You're looking for over-unders. If you put 5 together and hit that card, you can net up to 10x your entry fee. You can do this across multiple sports. There's KBO and tennis and soccer and highlight and MMA and MLB. And we're going to talk a little bit about MLB right here. I'm going to hit Adam with a couple pitcher scores. We'll see where he thinks they're going to end up. How about Max Scherzer? 43.5.
Under.
I agree. I would go under as well. Just by a hair. We'll stay in that same game. Pat Corbin, 17.5. Actually, slightly like the over there.
I'm trying to find them. I don't even see him.
Should type in Corbin.
Yeah, well, he's not in our projections.
Really? Okay. Well, I'll give you a different one. Tariq Skubal, we just talked about him, 30.5.
Slight under.
Yeah, same. That's a stay away for me, if it's anything. And then we'll close it out on, well, I don't have the opposite side of this one. So we'll do final one, Marco Gonzalez. And his line is 18.5. Whew.
Over?
I
Based on our
stuck the landing,
projections?
18.6.
Yeah, we have like 19.3.
Okay. Well, there you go, everybody. That is Prize Picks. Again, promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. Get $100 instant match deposit bonus. I agree, Jordan. It is good to still see me alive.
That would have been a annoying thing to deal with over the weekend for sure.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Would you have dealt with it, or would you have just left me there till Monday?
I mean, I think I would have had to deal with it mainly because if I just leave you there, it makes me look complicit. Like, then I have to answer questions about, did I do it or not? Whereas if I at least report it and then just go about my day, like, it makes it less likely that it was me.
Yeah, and you also, like, the body's going to start to stink.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would have at least had to ask for a room change.
And ask them to not go check the room.
Right. Right.
Or would you take me to the event Weekend at Bernie style?
No, I would have gone down to the front desk and found a new guest.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
If you died, I would have said I'm Adam and I just won the MMA final and let's go hang out. Rangers and Orioles. 4.2 run implied total for the Rangers, 3.4 for the Orioles. John Gray and Spencer Watkins going here. Gray, the fourth most owned pitcher today. It's kind of all packed together between Scherzer, Gray, Garcia, and Clevenger. But Gray is 27% owned, 9,700, second most expensive pitcher on today's slate. And then we've got Spencer Watkins on the opposite side, unowned at 5,900, and that is pretty much where he should be. Let's talk about John Gray here, a guy that I used to get to all the time, and now evidently I don't. But today, I think that it's very clear I'm going to be relatively neutral to the field on John Gray.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a weird spot because 9,700 is one of the more expensive price tags that we've seen on Gray. He's a good pitcher. He's got a 27% strikeout percentage, 3.32 xFIP, mediocre matchup against Baltimore. But so like on a lot of slates, or there have been a lot of slates where Gray is like 8,500 or something, and it's kind of just like, oh yeah, I'll come in around the field. I don't feel strong in one way or the other. Now you put him at 9,700, typically you would be like, oh, it's really tough to get here. But on this slate, it's just like, what are your alternatives really? What are you more confident in? You can obviously go to Luis Garcia. He has an okay matchup against Boston. You can go to Clevenger against Colorado, but both of those guys are also pulling more ownership. And then if you're going to go beyond that, you have serious questions about Skubal's matchup with Minnesota. Webb's facing the Dodgers. Heaney, we don't know how many pitches he's going to throw. So I think it's just kind of because of the lack of better alternatives on the slate, you just suck it up and deal with the fact he's 9,700. And I think the ownership here makes sense.
So do I. My question to you then is this. Do you prefer Scherzer or Gray?
I think
these guys are basically the same ownership. $900 is a fair amount more.
Yeah, I mean, I think Scherzer.
Yeah. Same from I do prefer Scherzer more here. And then we've got Heaney in this same range that I think is pretty clearly third.
Yeah, just because of the pitch count.
Yeah. That in the ownership, like keeping an eye on the Scherzer Gray relationship for ownership, I think will be pretty interesting throughout the day. If that starts to separate in either direction, I think you can make a case to just kind of go the other direction a little bit more aggressively. But I expect to get to more Scherzer. I don't expect to get to Spencer Watkins.
Neither do I. I just kind of was looking through his game log earlier. He's made 13 starts this season. How many times do you think Spencer Watkins has given up more than 3 earned runs?
I mean, obviously the number is low. So let's say once.
Yeah, once.
Nice. I wanted to go with 2, but I would rather be right. So
yeah, no, one time. So again, not saying don't play the Rangers because Spencer Watkins has only given up more than 3 runs once, but it's just kind of weird. Like he's been relatively good at preventing runs so far. His xFIP is a full run higher than his ERA. I don't see any reason why he's particularly good. But Baltimore has just done a good job recently with turning mediocre or bad pitchers into mediocre pitchers. So I do get a little hesitant. Like, I don't feel as confident stacking against Watkins as I did earlier in the year. Like early in the year, I'd stack against him and it would go poorly, and it would just be like, all right, I got really unlucky. Like this guy's awful. Now it's just like, all right, he's somehow managed to do this for half a season, so maybe there's something there. But realistically, he's going to be one of the weaker pitchers on any slate that he's on. So going to like Texas one way or the other. Just kind of thought it was interesting how it's played out so far.
Yeah, I mean, like the sample sizes and everything are pretty difficult. 5.42 Sierra last year, 5.11 this year. Swinging strike rate is up quite a bit. Certainly helpful. Completely nerfed his home run per fly ball rate. 18% last season, 8% this year. That's certainly helping.
Part of that probably has to do with Camden Yards changing.
It sure does. So you can't be mad there. He wasn't leaving anybody on base last year. But like the underlying stats are basically the same. The Ks per 9, the same. Walks per 9, the same. Like he's the same guy in that regard.
Yeah. Pretty drastic reverse splits going back to last year and also this year individually. Since the start of last year, 144 expected ISO, 344 expected WOBA against lefties, 296 expected ISO, 397 expected WOBA against righties. This year specifically, 124 expected ISO to lefties, 345 expected WOBA, 255 expected ISO, 365 expected WOBA to righties. Not saying that means you like shouldn't play Nate Lowe or Cole Calhoun or Tavares, but Adolis Garcia looks very good. Marcus Semien looks very good.
So I'm just answering Eric Johnson. He wanted to know if I kept drinking after puking in the garbage can in Chicago, and that was kept drinking. Yeah, that's my recovery is easy. Just I usually need to help it out somehow. Need a little bit of a boost, jumpstart. Too old for this mess now. I guess the team that we're talking about here is the Rangers. They are second in ownership right now. 13th in top stack, 9th in top value. Is this just going to change eventually? Because they look not that great in terms of our top stack odds. I like them a little bit more than we're showing, but I still had them 5th in top stack, 6th in value. How do you feel about the ownership on Texas right now?
I think it comes down a little. Like I think I'm on the same page as you. I think that the top stack percentage goes up a little bit, and the ownership also comes down a little bit.
Yeah, and it is skewed by Semien right now.
Right, and like I do think he's a very good play. Also, who knows if Corey Seager's in the lineup? We have him projected for like 15% ownership. If he's out of the lineup, then Texas's aggregate ownership is just going to come down. If he's in the lineup, he's 4,600 and he looks great. So that's another thing that, you know, to keep in mind. King of Smack said, I think on a slate like this, you could actually fade Scherzer and Gray. Yeah, sure. I would think that I don't have them in every lineup. I think this is actually a slate where like it's more difficult to do because you just have to find 2 other pitchers, and that's not the easiest thing to do on this slate. But yeah, there's like, I'm certainly not setting a rule or something saying I have to have at least one.
No. Yeah, like I said, I had Texas 5th in top stack, 6.5%, basically comparable from a value perspective. I think they look pretty solid. And obviously Semien in the leadoff spot, 4,700, second base and shortstop eligibility. That just looks like a fantastic play today.
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned, you know, the fact that he's facing a righty certainly doesn't matter here against Watkins either.
Yeah. Are you getting to your Orioles today? Doesn't feel like that kind of day. Although you have been trying to jam them pretty regularly.
Not even trying, it just happens. But yeah, I mean, I think they're a pretty low probability stack. Obviously, they're facing John Gray. He's one of the best pitchers on the slate. There's nothing really that you can look to with him and say, like, this is a weakness. His strikeout percentage against lefties is lower than righties, but he's still holding them to a 128 expected ISO. So really, it's just, you know, if you get to Baltimore, there's some power there. But this is a little bit different too, because a lot of times when I get to Baltimore, it's because they're not getting much ownership and they're not very expensive. Mullins is 5,300, Rutschman is 5,500, Santander is 4,900. The rest of the lineup is relatively inexpensive, but those are really expensive price tags here.
They really are. It's more than I was expecting, that was for sure. I had 5 individual hitters in the crunch that I ran earlier today. That's probably not going to be a whole hell of a lot of Baltimore.
And yeah, Stephen Lewis is right as well. Watkins is whatever, but if you get him out after 5 innings, you are getting a solid Baltimore bullpen behind him.
The Baltimore bullpen has thrown the third most innings this year.
Yeah, I'm still kind of waiting for them to implode, but hasn't happened yet.
No, they're 7th in xFIP. I think they project a little bit worse via like the depth charts at Fangraphs, like moving forward. But still, at the very least, they are average.
Yeah. I just meant from like a they get burned out standpoint.
Sure.
I also, I mean, I apply the same thing to the bullpen that I've said about like Austin Voth and Spencer Watkins. I don't totally buy into projections with the Orioles. This has become one of the most analytically advanced teams, and they have become just very good at maximizing people's talent. So like you take Austin Voth, like he's the clear example. You take him from being a below average, basically fringe major league pitcher with the Nats. He comes over to Baltimore. They just show him a bunch of stuff, and now he's suddenly like solid.
Imagine what they'd be able to do if they had real pitching.
Right. Yeah, I mean they've kind of just become the opposite of what Baltimore always was. They would have like young pitching talent and then turn them into absolute garbage. And now they just find these random pitchers from anywhere and just turn them into amazing arms.
Bundy, Guthrie. What else are we missing?
Britton as a starter.
Okay. Oh,
Mattis, Arrieta.
Mattis, yeah. Craziness. I've had so many good young arms.
Yeah,
They're
I mean,
what
they
were
actually
supposed to be good
maximized
young
Guthrie
arms
to some extent.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I mean, the previous iteration of what the Orioles have now with like all these prospects coming up, and it wasn't as good as now, but like, yeah, it was they had Arrieta, Britton, Mattis, all coming up together, and then just tanked all of them.
Great times.
Yeah, Gossman's another one.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot that he was there to start. He's had a weird career. Like obviously turned it into what everybody thought it was going to be, but
yeah, took a while to get there because it wasn't just the O's that missed on him. Like the Braves didn't keep him, the Reds didn't keep him.
Right. White Sox and Royals, 4.9 run implied total for the White Sox, 4 for the Royals. Michael Kopech and Brad Keller. No one rostering Keller, 6,800. Kopech about 10% owned, 7K against the Royals. That seems about right. I don't have much of a problem there. Maybe I'd like to get a little bit more. I think like the value and the upside is there, but I think about 10% is where I'll end up. Not a major priority, just is.
I think Kopech's a little underowned.
Okay, talk to me.
It's just the pitching on this slate isn't very good. Scherzer is good, clearly. Garcia, Gray, Clevenger, those guys are all fine. But like Gray is also expensive. I think you could argue he's a little bit overpriced. Garcia has the pitch count concerns, at least from the top end. Skubal's got the tough matchup. It's just this is a slate where like you have ownership going to guys that just either have relatively difficult matchups or aren't very good. Domingo Germán pulling 20% ownership for $600 less. Is he really better than Kopech? And the matchup against Seattle is probably more difficult than Kansas City. It's only close because of Rodriguez being out. You're gonna have basically Melendez, Witt, Perez, Dozier. Perez being back does make this lineup a little bit deeper, and Witt being back, now you have 6 guys that are still solid. So I guess that does work against Kopech and drive him down a little bit. You basically just added 2 major league hitters to this lineup from what they had been, but I still just Kopech has his issues. He's walking 12.5% of hitters this year, 4.96 xFIP. Only a 21.4% strikeout percentage. That seems like it should be higher given the stuff that he has. But I just think there's enough questions about the pitchers on this slate that are getting more ownership that I think Kopech going a little bit under owned maybe.
Sounds good to me. I don't think you're talking about Keller though.
No, I have a more difficult time getting to Keller. 6,800 is cheap. We know that from a liked standpoint, he can go relatively deep in the games, but only a 16% strikeout percentage. Not a great matchup against the White Sox. I have more difficulty justifying that one.
Royals bats on the opposite side of Kopech and that 12% ownership are 5th in aggregate ownership, 8th in our top stack tool. I actually have the Royals a little bit higher. I know you got to the Royals yesterday. Will you be getting to the Royals today?
Probably. Like I just do every slate. I don't totally get it.
They're my third most exposed team right now.
You said they're your most exposed team?
Third.
Okay, yeah. I think what it is, I've talked about it before. It's as a whole, the offense isn't great, but they just cover really weak positions. MJ Melendez is always, when he's leading off, he's always going to be one of the more appealing catcher options. Bobby Witt is always one of the highest upside shortstops. Perez is back. That's another very high upside catcher. And Melendez, you can play in the outfield as well. Pasquantino at 2,200. This is one of the better hitting prospects in baseball. Whit Merrifield is always one of the top second base options. So it just ends up being like people don't really stack this team because they're not very good and they always have a relatively low implied run total. But when you look at the salary, the points per dollar, the talent at these weaker positions, they kind of always stand out. It would be different if, Whit Merrifield were an outfielder and Perez were an outfielder. You would be like, oh, well, they're fine, but there's a million outfielders that look better. When you're talking about them being catchers and shortstops and second basemen, or in Pasquantino's case, first base, but minimum salary, basically, they just end up still looking pretty good. And also completely not related, Larry C, it was Caleb Joseph. He would call splitters for Gossman. Gossman would be lights out. Nobody else would do it. Joseph actually talked about it because he works in the Toronto system now. He talked about it on a broadcast when Gossman was pitching against the Orioles, that it was like a philosophical thing for Baltimore. Like they wanted him to just throw fastballs up in the zone.
I can't imagine that. It's like, how about we go with the results on the field? Like, yep. Seems to be working. Maybe we hang on to that until we find out that it doesn't. Yeah, I can't see a way that I'm not getting to Kansas City today. And I'm hoping that Kopech even maintains some of this ownership because it just makes it even a little bit more interesting for me. So sign me up for KC. Maybe sign me up for an under-owned White Sox team here too. They are 4th in top stack, 10th in ownership. I don't think that I'm going to be getting to a ton of Chicago, but I think there's something here.
Yeah, the lack of ownership makes them kind of appealing. Keller's not a pitcher that I love targeting from a fantasy standpoint because even though he doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, he does do a good job limiting power. Only a 133 expected ISO to righties, 124 to lefties this year. But there is still talent in the White Sox lineup, and they're just not getting any ownership. 5.1 implied run total right now. Outside of Anderson, Moncada, Abreu. Actually, this team in general is kind of expensive. Andrew Vaughn's also at 5K. But like Yasmani Grandal at 4,400, Pollock at 3,800. Those are both reasonable price tags. So I understand why you're not getting that much ownership when you combine the prices with the fact that Keller is just pretty good at limiting power. But they are still a team that we haven't talked about any offenses that we like truly love on this slate. I guess the Yankees, I guess the Mets, but other than that, it's just been a lot of like, oh, this offense is good, but the other pitcher is kind of good too. I think the White Sox fit into there as well.
Perfect. Anything else in this one?
Nope.
Astros and Red Sox. 4.3 run implied total for the Stros, 3.2 for the Red Sox. Luis Garcia going for Houston. Nathan Eovaldi going for the Red Sox. Garcia, 35% owned today at 8,600. Nathan Eovaldi, just 4% owned at 7,600. We'll start with Garcia. I think he looks great. That price tag is very appealing. Probably my second favorite pitcher on today's slate.
Yeah, he looks fine. I think, the ownership's a little bit higher than I would like, but I also understand why it's there because kind of like we were saying with John Gray, where else are you going to go and be like, oh, well, you can't point to what the field is missing. Like there's no pitcher where I'm just like, oh, Garcia shouldn't be 35% and this guy be, 12%. I understand why he's getting the ownership just because of a lack of alternatives. No Devers for Boston, no Story, makes this lineup a little bit weaker. Garcia is a good pitcher overall. He has a 26.5% strikeout percentage, 3.62 xFIP this year. He does have a relatively short leash, but that's not as big of a deal when he's only $8,600.
Yeah, the price tag just works here. And you might look at it and think like, oh, I don't need that much Garcia against Boston. This is not a good Boston lineup at all. I got it at a 103 aggregate WRC plus, above average strikeout rate. There's not a lot of threats in this lineup. I mean, there are obviously some, but I'm not all that nervous about it. So sign me up for Luis Garcia. I think that Garcia and Scherzer will be my most owned combination for today.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable.
Is there anything for Eovaldi, or is this just a spot where you don't really want to target against Houston?
I don't want to target against Houston, but I just saw somebody, I think it was, Stephen Leibowitz mentioned in chat about Eovaldi's velocity. It is down a couple miles an hour. His last 4 starts, so this is since prior to his time on the injury list and then the 3 starts since he's been back. 94 miles an hour, 94.8, 94.6, 94.7 on his fastball. If you look over the last 30 days, 208 expected ISO with a 10.9% strikeout percentage to righties, only 139 to lefties, but only a 14% strikeout percentage. I do think, even with no concerns, it would be very difficult to make a case to get to Eovaldi against the Astros. It's more so that I think that there is some added volatility here. And, Eovaldi's been a pitcher that gives up home runs anyway. Now you get kind of some red flags. I think the Astros are actually interesting.
All righty. Let's see. Did I get any Eovaldi? I only had 2% when I ran my crunch earlier today, so I don't have anything to add there. You're not getting to Red Sox bats, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Astros 12th in top stack, 11th in ownership. Is there anything here?
I think so. I mean, it's one of those teams that I always like to roster at low ownership anyway. But like I was saying, Eovaldi at his best is a pitcher that will give up home runs. If we're getting some sort of sub 100% Eovaldi, which is possible given the velocity over his last few starts, then you just kind of assume that volatility is there even more so. And so you're just talking about a really, really good Houston offense, not getting much ownership against a pitcher that even if he is 100% and the velocity is just a random thing, I would still like the idea of getting to Houston against somebody that gives up home runs like Eovaldi does.
Obviously, I'm happy to pick off your Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tuckers of the world. I think they stand out the most to me. Alvarez he's got so much power. It's insane. This Astros lineup is loaded today. I think it's probably the best lineup on the slate. At least the one that I have in here.
The pricing's not bad either. Alvarez is 6,200, but that's fully deserved. Altuve at 5,400, but Bregman 46, Tucker 44 looks great. Pena 45, Gurriel 33. Overall as a stack, it's really not that difficult to get to.
Anything else here, Astros or Red Sox?
Nope.
Got a promo code for you folks. Are you ready? Okay, I'll just assume you are. Before we're even doing this promo code, hit the like button. 65 likes with 414 people in here. That is not enough at all. Needs to be up over 100. So hit that thumbs up. It helps us out a ton. MLB Strategy Show. One gigantic word, all caps. You can get 1 week of Stokastic Plus Platinum for 50% off your normal price. And that covers everything. Just because it's a strategy show promo or MLB show promo doesn't mean that it's just for MLB. You get to test out everything that we have behind the paywall. That's MLB, that's PGA, F1, MMA, probably missing some other sports that are going on right now that you would also have access to. We're talking projections, ownership, top stacks, top fighters, top golfers. There are so many tools behind the paywall, including Adam, and you'll get access to all of them using the promo code MLB Strategy Show. One giant word. You see it on the screen right now. 50% off your first week of Stokastic Plus Platinum.
Did you just say I was behind the paywall?
No, I said you were one of the tools behind the paywall.
Oh, okay.
4.3 run implied total for the Padres, 3.1 for the Rockies. Mike Clevinger and Antonio Senzatella. Clevinger, 35% owned today, basically tied with Luis Garcia and basically tied in terms of salary as well. Senzatella pulling no ownership. Clevinger feel a little over-owned here. Like, I would prefer Garcia to Clevinger.
I think they're close. I mean, the matchup is better for Clevinger, I think. Colorado doesn't strike out a ton, but just clearly a really bad offense outside of course. 24.2% strikeout percentage, 3.86 xFIP for Clevinger this year. We actually have Garcia projected 4 points higher than Clevinger, or 3.5. I guess that seems a little high to me, but
How about at 1.5?
Yeah, but to your point, I do think it's reasonable to have Garcia projected a little bit higher, in which case the ownership probably should be a little bit higher on Garcia / lower on Clevinger.
Sure. Let's lump Skubal into this because we've got this group of 3 guys here, 8,600, 8,300, and then Skubal at 8K. They are the guys in at least minor double digits of ownership. Are they is the order of those guys just their order of salary? Is it Clevinger or is it Garcia, Clevinger, Skubal to you?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, same for me.
And I think Garcia and Clevinger are the two that actually like project well, and that not that I'm really ever confident in any pitcher, but certainly not good, but not great guys like this group. But I think just based on the matchups, Garcia and Clevenger are the ones where you're going in saying, like, okay, it's a good spot. I think it's likely they do well. Skubal's the one where you're kind of going in saying, like, all right, this is scary, but he's also not getting as much ownership. So he's much more of the like relatively lower probability but high upside tournament play. Whereas the other two are the ones where it's just like, all right, I already have some contrarian pieces. These guys grade out the best, so I'll just play them.
Senzatella?
No.
Okay. Let's talk Padres bats then. 9th in top stack, 9th in ownership. I think they're just like a completely middle of the pack team. I would have liked to try to get on the opposite side of Senzatella because I think he's absolute trash, but
I actually don't. But
really,
as far as a pitcher, no. As far as a DFS pitcher, yes.
That's fair. Yeah, certainly doesn't miss bats. Do you like the Padres bats?
Not really. Senzatella, less than 1 home run per 9 this year. 4.14 xFIP is fine. He's getting out of Coors Field. 185 expected ISO to righties, 116 to lefties. Like, he's not a good enough pitcher that I'm, obviously just actively avoiding him. But, Machado at 4,900 looks pretty good. Cronenworth looks fine at 4,300. It's just I kind of doubt that I get to like full Padres stacks. I think it's more likely that I just kind of mix and match guys like Machado and Cronenworth.
Let me see how much I got earlier. I was under the field on the Padres. Doesn't look like a spot that I'm going to be prioritizing heavily. And I'm quite confident that I will not be prioritizing the Colorado Rockies bats for today.
Yeah, me neither. King of Smack said Clevenger has been bad against Colorado. I, 1, don't care, and 2, would venture to guess that some of that has to do with the fact they play their home games in Coors Field.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, like, how many games has Mike Clevenger thrown against the Rockies?
Yeah, I mean, the guy pitched most of his career in the American League. The Rockies, like all teams, change year to year. Players also change, so couldn't care less what he's done against a team in the past anyway. But especially a team like Colorado, if you're going to just lump in games in Coors Field, it's completely more meaningless than already meaningless, which it was.
I'm pulling it up now to see it. All right. Against Colorado in his career. Nope. That's for Colorado. He has surprisingly no games against or pitching for Colorado.
Yeah,
just in case you were curious.
Yeah, King of Smack said he's faced them twice this year. Yeah, both were in Coors Field. Like,
he's faced them 4 times in his career.
Right.
And the second time that he faced him, his xFIP for the game was 4.7. So no.
Yeah, and in his even in his 2 games this year, the first one he only went 2 innings, but his xFIP was 1.86. And again, that game was in Coors. I mean, if you're going to point to 2 games in Coors and then say that's a reason not to play somebody against the Rockies outside of Coors, I mean,
career 364 WOBA against Colorado, a 8.27 ERA, which I obviously don't give a shit about, but boy, oh boy, is that a big number. I like the strikeout rate and everything is fine, but yeah, that I've never heard of anything more meaningless. So let's get away from it. And let's close it out. Giants and Dodgers, 3.7 run implied total for the Giants, 4.2 for the Dodgers. Logan Webb, Andrew Heaney. Logan Webb basically unowned at 8,800. Good real life pitcher, maybe not the best fantasy pitcher, and very clearly a difficult matchup. Heaney on the opposite side, 9,500, 12% owned. Where do you land on Heaney? Because I think he's tricky today.
Yeah, I think the ownership pretty much makes sense to me. He threw, I think it was 71 pitches last start. Went 4 innings. I assume he's going to throw a bit more here, but I also, based on 1, just my guess, and then 2, the way the Dodgers typically handle their pitchers, I have a hard time thinking that he's just going to get like a huge bump in length here. I think, maybe you're talking like 80, 85 pitches. If he gets through 5 innings, you certainly run the risk of Roberts just being like, okay, cool, you're done. Yeah. So he's a good strikeout.
It would really surprise me to see him start a 6th inning.
Right, exactly. Like, well, my point was like, even if he's being like efficient, like let's say, like I think that there's a good chance he's allowed to throw more than 71 pitches here. Yeah. But I also, given Dave Roberts' history and the way the Dodgers typically handle pitchers, I'm not confident that if he were to get through 5 on like 68 pitches, or 70 pitches that they say, oh, well, you were going to throw 85 today. Like there's a decent chance that they still are just like, he's one of the managers that I think still, for whatever reason, believes that innings pitched is something that like affects your arm, as opposed to like how many pitches you throw and how stressful they were and all of that. So that's kind of what I'm getting at, is I think that there's a chance it's like, oh, well, he can throw 80 pitches or 5 innings, as opposed to just he can throw 80, 85 pitches. So that's concerning, but it's also not a great pitching slate. He is a pretty good pitcher. He has a 34.5% strikeout percentage in his limited sample this season. So I get the ownership from a standpoint of like, he can go score 15, 16 DraftKings points. And as long as John Gray scores less than that, as long as Garcia scores less than that, there's still a path for Heaney to get there. But I still think that top end, there isn't really that top end on his range of outcomes, because I don't think he's going to be allowed to go deep enough.
Yeah, I was under on my crunch earlier, and I don't think it's going to get any better as the day goes on. So don't expect to get there. Is there any justification for Logan Webb today?
I have a really difficult time. He's just like the prototypical, he's going under owned, but he's also a low probability play. I probably just end up making lineups that have low owned guys elsewhere. Like you said, he's a good real life pitcher, but only a 20.6% strikeout percentage this year facing the Dodgers. It's just tough for me to get to him.
Yeah. 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher in our top pitcher model. I had it at 11. So those are basically the exact same number. You would never be surprised to see him just have a good game where like he doesn't get BABIP to death and he's able to just put it together from an outs perspective. I don't really need to take that risk against the Dodgers. I'm not sure what the benefit really is there. And then I don't really want to get to either offense here. Like clearly there are individual bats that I'm happy to have, but I don't think the Dodgers grade out all. Well, I think they're under owned for sure, but it's a difficult spot against Logan Webb. It's a park that doesn't play well for power in any way. How does this make you feel about the Dodgers? Because they have a significantly higher top stack odds than their ownership currently.
So the Dodgers definitely are one of those handful of teams where I don't care really what pitcher they're facing. You can, if you're playing them in tournaments, you're not wrong. Like their ownership goes down because it's a tough matchup, but their ceiling is still ridiculously high because they're so good. One reason I think it'll be really difficult to get to them is looking at the pricing. The bottom of the order is really cheap. That's all fine. Jake Lamb is 2,800. Bellinger's 3,600. If James Outman's playing, he's 2K flat. But the guys that you're going to really want, Betts, Turner, Freeman, Smith, they're all, if you're playing them together, they're going to force you to sacrifice somewhere else in your lineup as well. So now you're taking a team against one of the better pitchers in terms of talent, run prevention, however you want to phrase it, on the slate in a really difficult park to hit, especially for power. And you're also then downgrading your pitchers or your one-offs or something like that. I think that I'm more likely to get to Houston against Eovaldi because you just don't run into those same pricing problems. We talked about it before. Alvarez and Altuve are expensive, but other than that, you're talking about like a middle-of-the-road stack in terms of price. So I can build just stronger lineups around them if I want to target a pitcher that isn't particularly bad, but with an offense that's really good. So I think that's the biggest thing for the Dodgers. Not only is it a tough matchup and a tough park, but you're also going to end up downgrading other parts of your lineup.
Yeah, I can't go too crazy here. I wouldn't mind being a bit over. If we knew that they maintain 2.3%, the idea of getting to like 6 is really appealing to me, where it doesn't really have a huge out. Like it's not going to matter all that much to my overall portfolio, but I am over in a spot where you're never going to be surprised if the Dodgers just hang it on anybody.
Right.
What about the exceptional value Giants stack, which I feel like we have to talk about on a regular basis here against Heaney? The Giants are basically free, but I don't love it.
Me neither. It's just, I hate this team. The park isn't good for power. Heaney's a good pitcher. He has had home run issues in the past, but he's overall, a solid pitcher, and this park does play down power. And then you just run into the issue of, Heaney's going to go call it 5 innings or whatever. You're going to get relievers. You're going to get Slater out of the game. You're going to get Ruff out of the game. You'll probably get Mercedes out of the game. So I don't know. I don't expect to get to the Giants really.
Yeah, I just don't. I can't justify it.
Like it's typically pretty easy for me to write off the Giants in spots like this where it's like, not a very good matchup. It's more difficult for me when it's like, oh, they're facing a really bad pitcher. I know these guys are probably going to come out after the 6th inning, but they're also cheap and going to get a couple of really favorable plate appearances. When your plate appearances are against a guy like Heaney in San Francisco, and then there's a good chance that you're not even getting your like 3rd or 4th, it's easier to just kind of say like, I don't want to get here.
Sum it up. Favorite stacks.
Yankees, Mets, Houston, KC.
Yankees, Guardians, Royals. Kind of like the Mariners on the sneak tip at no ownership. That didn't work out for me yesterday.
Yeah.
Pitchers?
Scherzer, Clevenger, Gray, Garcia. Herman, if you need to pay down. Kopech, sort of.
Yeah, I like the Kopech call. Scherzer, Garcia are going to be my preferred combo for today. Don't know how much Herman I'm going to get to. I'm anxious to see that as we get closer to lock. So, anything else we need to touch on for today's slate?
Your embarrassing performance of getting people to click the like button, because I had totally forgotten until Mike just mentioned it in chat. So, means you clearly didn't do a good enough job of reminding me.
Yeah, I'm not great at it from time to time, especially on Monday mornings. But if you guys can reward us with a couple more and get that number over 100, it would be great. Tons more content coming up today. Best Ball Mania, Deeper Dive, Live Before Lock. Adam's got his Tournament Plays videos coming out shortly. I will drop the process at some point in time in the near future. Apologies for the delay there, but I just didn't have the physical ability to do that this morning. Sleep was more important.
I'm glad that you mentioned my Tournament Plays video, because I just totally forgot those existed.
Well, there you go, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring this video. We will talk to you later. Good luck tonight. Peace.